Okay, well, welcome everyone to our study abroad session for DACA and for Advance Parole information. I would like to welcome all of you who are joining us today, and we will be recording this, and we will post it on both our Undocumented Student Services website as well as on the Study Abroad website so that you can come back to it at any time and share out the information as well. I am Kelly O'Sullivan Summer, and I'm the Director of Study Abroad at UC San Diego, and I'm very happy to be here with my two colleagues today, so I will pass it to Andres to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Andres Lemons. I'm the immigration attorney with UC Immigrant Legal Services, and I'm based at UC San Diego, helping the students and their immediate family there.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Alfaro, and I am the program manager for Undocumented Student Services at UC San Diego. I've been on campus since 2016, and since then we've been able to grow our programs, grow our team, bring Andres on board full-time, and offer the support that is needed for our undocumented students.
Great. Well, our plan today is just to talk really briefly about study abroad because we assume that probably most of you who are on this webinar or joining us today, you already know that you want to study abroad. You probably may have already been in and seen some of the staff advisors in the study abroad office, well, virtually this last year by Zoom. And you may have already picked your program that you're interested in studying abroad on. So we want to spend the majority of our time talking about DACA and Advance Parole. But just really quickly to give you a little highlight of study abroad, our mission in study abroad is to make global academic and co-curricular experiences accessible to everybody on campus. And so we do that through our vision you can see here. We aim to provide these high quality experiences that will have lifelong and meaningful academic, personal and career benefits to all of our UC San Diego students. And our core values in our office, you can see here, inclusive excellence, academic excellence, health and safety, of course, and that's especially important right now in the time of COVID. Empowerment, we really like to work with students to empower you to make the best decisions for your future. And then community engagement, and we are data driven, and we do have a lot of great data on our website, so I'd encourage you to check it out. Next slide, please. Just quickly, we can send students virtually anywhere in the world, not right now, of course, during COVID, but during non-COVID times, and we will get back to traveling. But we can send students on virtually anywhere in the world on many different programs. So we work with the University of California Education Abroad program. We have our own faculty-led summer global seminars, which are fantastic opportunities. And then we work with about 25 additional program partners through our Opportunities Abroad program. And we also send students on other UC campus programs. And then most excitingly, we have our new campus-based global exchanges. And so we send students from UCSD to work with faculty in other universities around the world where our universities have faculty connections. Next slide. Oh, and then I will pass it on to Danielle.
Thank you, Kelly. I will also spend just a minute talking about undocumented student services. Our mission is the success and upward mobility of all our undocumented students pursuing higher education. Our guiding principles is really what dictates how we do our work, why we do our work, and the mission, the impact that we want to have with our undocumented students. A lot of the things that we do and that we offer are alternatives to what the campus offers to other students, but programs that are not accessible to our undocumented students. So it's creating alternatives, it's creating access, it is innovating, it is making sure that our students have the same opportunities that other students have. And unfortunately, in some cases, we wish those opportunities were available, but the undocumented status has been an issue. So our goal is to eliminate those barriers, create opportunities, and ensure that our undocumented students have access to as many opportunities as they can. A little bit about our programs and services. When it comes to services, our students have access to legal support, and this is legal support that is provided by Andres Lemons. They have access to guidance and troubleshooting consultations, and these happen with myself and another professional staff. A lot of the work that we do is troubleshooting when a student is not getting their financial aid or is looking for a house or is looking for employment and they don't know how to do that. That's where we come in. It's providing the legal support that Andres does for first-time DACA applications, for applications that allow you to adjust your immigration status. So that's briefly the services that we provide: legal services, guidance, and troubleshooting. In terms of our programs, we have our Dream Fellowship program, which is an experiential learning program that allows undocumented students who don't have a work permit the ability to work, the ability to participate in an unpaid internship with any department on campus, and at the same time get a scholarship. The second opportunity is our internship program. These are paid positions through our department where we ask our interns to work on the outreach, the community building, the legal support, the professional development that we provide for our students. We also have professional development activities. So the interns participating in the internships will organize professional development workshops. We'll bring professional people to offer those opportunities for our students. And lastly, same with professional development, we believe in the entrepreneurship mindset. We want our students to be prepared for opportunities that don't necessarily rely on a work permit or a legal status. We want them to be able to perform in any field that they want as entrepreneurs. Lastly is our student aid. So along with the fellowship is a scholarship, as I mentioned. This is a $5,000 scholarship for students who participate in the Dream Fellowship program and who participate in all of the requirements of this activity. The last two things in terms of student aid, the Yes Food program. This is an alternative to CalFresh. Our students are not eligible for that. Our alternative is to provide them with grocery gift cards. And lastly, the USS Equity Grant. This is a grant that is provided to our students to cover professional development expenses and graduate school preparation expenses. It looks like it's a little bit what we do, but we actually do a ton. Feel free to check out our website, maybe not click on the link, but scan the code that's on the left side so you can take a look at everything that we offer. Thank you.
All right. I think this is Kelly's, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit out of order, but that's okay. Just a reminder that especially if you have DACA status and you want to apply for advance parole, planning ahead always means success for study abroad. Typically, students plan even sometimes 2 to 3 years in advance, depending on what program of study they're doing at UCSD, just to make sure that all of your courses are going to fit into your major, that you're going to get credit for your courses, and that you can continue to make progress toward your degree. But it's especially important for students who are applying for advanced parole. And so I think the longer ahead you can plan, the better chance for success. And I know Andres is going to talk a lot about that in the slides to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And yeah, so now we can move on to talking about advanced parole in the context of DACA. Oh, and I should mention, if any of you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and it can be anonymous. That's totally fine. And we'll answer those at the end of this portion. All three of us will be available to answer any questions you may have. So, so first of all, this is directed to students with DACA who want to travel and study abroad. If a student does not have DACA and they're undocumented, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to get advanced parole through this DACA advanced parole thing. So that would not, study abroad might not be an option for them. But either way, whatever situation applies, I recommend that you book an appointment to meet up with me, so we could talk about your specific case one-on-one and go through the details. Because here I'm going to give an overview, but every case has specific things that are good talking one-on-one about. That's our website where you can book the appointment. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And again, to reiterate, if you want to study abroad and you have DACA, yeah, make sure to book an appointment with me as soon as possible. That's probably the most important thing I have to say in this whole thing. All right, so some of these slides I'm going to just briefly go over because a lot of you probably already know about them. But what is the current state of DACA and advance parole? Basically, in December of last year, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to fully restore DACA, meaning that it's basically how it was when Obama was president. And so 2-year renewals are back because for a while there were 1-year renewals. Advanced parole is back for humanitarian reasons, for education or work reasons. Before that decision, it was only available for urgent humanitarian reasons, and before that, it wasn't available at all. But now it's open again, and initial DACA requests are accepted. So, can I travel abroad as an undocumented student? Well, we have to analyze the case. Step 1 is you need DACA. Step 2, qualifying reason to travel abroad, which we'll get into. Step 3, apply for advanced parole. And we're going to talk about what is advanced parole, what should I consider before applying for advanced parole, and how do I apply for advanced parole. Step 4, receive a grant, and then step 5, how to travel safely. And I don't have any slides on COVID-19, but obviously that's another consideration to be aware of. But yeah, we'll get into that later. All right, so can I travel abroad as an undocumented student? Yes, but only if you have a current valid DACA grant. So in other words, if you just applied for DACA for the first time ever and it hasn't been approved yet, you cannot apply for advanced parole yet. You have to wait for DACA to be approved. So then the next point says that you apply for and are granted advanced parole permission to travel by the government. That advanced parole is basically permission to travel by the government. It's a document that they issue, giving the person specific dates when they can travel. And because, without advanced parole, if you have DACA and you travel without advanced parole, well, one, they probably won't let you back into the country. And 2, even if they do, your next time you renew your DACA, it'll probably be denied because traveling without advanced parole and DACA disqualifies someone for DACA. Okay, and then the last point, and there are no factors that would make you inadmissible upon returning to the US. That's why it's good to meet with me, because in some cases, some people might not want to travel on advanced parole because it's too risky in their specific situations. For example, if they have prior deportation orders, or if they have certain criminal histories, or if they've lied to the government, and so certain things like that could make it more risky. All right, so the next slide, the step 1 to figure out if you can travel study abroad, you must have a current valid DACA grant, which I talked about. And DACA, I think we all know what DACA is, but there's just some basic points about what it is there. So I'll just leave that up for a couple of minutes. But I think at this point, everyone knows what it is. And the USCIS website actually has a lot of good information on it as well, the US Citizenship and Immigration Services website. So do you qualify for DACA? Maybe there's some people here who want to travel on advanced parole and study abroad, but they don't have DACA. They want to know if they qualify. These are the requirements. They're also on the USCIS website. I'm not going to get into them because I think they're pretty clear. I think everyone knows at this point what the requirements are. So we can just go to the next slide. But if you do think you qualify for DACA, please also reach out to me, because I do help students apply for initial DACA. Also, your DACA must be currently valid in order to travel abroad. In other words, if you let's say you apply for advanced parole, you get it, but your DACA just expired, well then you can't use advanced parole until you renew your DACA. So it's another consideration. When does your DACA expire? And we would talk about that when we would meet. But the general advice is to meet with the attorney, with me, 6 months before the expiration of your DACA, so that we could at least get the ball rolling. We might not apply 6 months before, but at least so we can have that discussion and make sure there won't be any hiccups. All right, another thing to consider with DACA renewal, that's basically, because DACA recipients get the 2-year DACA, they have to renew every 2 years. So here are just some basic points about, what renewal does. One important thing, renewing your DACA allows you to not accrue unlawful presence in the US after your initial DACA grant expires. That's important because accruing unlawful presence makes it more complicated for people to travel, and if they need to travel to get their green card. If you have had any contact with law enforcement or immigration authorities, or if you have left the country since submitting the initial DACA application, please consult with an attorney before applying for a DACA renewal. Just some basic, notices there. I mean, given that you're probably all UCSD students, you might as well renew with me because it's free. And I don't charge anything. And oftentimes the school is willing to pay for the renewal fee. All right. So can I travel abroad as an undocumented student? You cannot apply for advance parole while your initial DACA request is still pending, which I mentioned earlier. If an individual leaves the US while the initial DACA request is pending, the DACA request will be denied. Yeah, that's correct. So it's just important to point that out. So if anyone has their initial DACA request that's pending right now, that they have to wait until it's approved before getting advance parole, before applying for advance parole. Just checking the time. Okay. Now, step 2, you must have a qualifying reason for travel abroad. So this is very important to understand. So the qualifying reasons could be for humanitarian purposes, for educational reasons, or for employment. And obviously, if it's study abroad, it would be educational. But it could also be like academic research. That could also be considered educational. As far as like guidance from the government, there's not much guidance in terms of, these categories. And generally, at least when Obama was president, granted pretty liberally. Advance parole for DACA recipients hasn't existed for a couple of years. So we're kind of in new grounds now, in the sense of like how long it's taking and everything. But, we anticipated it's going to be very similar to when Obama was president, because Biden was vice president at that time, and now he's president. So humanitarian reasons could be to seek medical assistance. That's pretty rare. To go to a funeral for like a family member or a loved one, or to see a sick relative. That's really the most common reason for DACA recipients to apply for advance parole, to see a sick relative. For example, most students have, maybe not most, but a lot of students maybe have their grandparents that live abroad, and oftentimes grandparents have medical issues, so that could be a reason to travel on advance parole. Educational, but educational study abroad is another excellent reason. And then employment, it could be like an overseas assignment or to attend some type of conference. Sometimes, students attend like different conferences for interviews, like job interviews and stuff, or for trainings. That's also an option. So there's a lot of ways to get advance parole to travel abroad. So that's good. Step 3, you must apply for advance parole to travel abroad. Very important, which I mentioned before. If someone has DACA and they travel without advance parole, they probably will not be let back into the country. And if they are, their DACA renewal after that will probably be denied because of the requirements under DACA. So again, advance parole is advance permission to enter the US temporarily for a given purpose. It does say temporarily for a given purpose. That's like the legal definition. It's kind of confusing because as a DACA recipient, most people plan on living here for a long time, not temporarily, but that's kind of how it's explained, how it's written. What is parole? It's synonymous with permission. So you're applying for permission to exit and re-enter the US for one of the qualifying reasons. And advanced parole application, it's the USCIS form I-131, I-131. To apply for advanced parole, one would need to fill out that form and submit it along with the statement of purpose explaining why they want to travel, supporting evidence. There is a $575 fee that USCIS charges, pretty hefty, and it's gone up over the years. But yeah, that's what advanced parole is. More on advanced parole. What important factors should I consider when applying for advanced parole? Okay, so very important. It is not the right to re-enter the US. In other words, it does not guarantee that the person will be allowed re-entry into the US. So that's kind of scary, right? What? I'm not guaranteed re-entry? No, unfortunately not. It's not a 100% guarantee. When the person is at the border or at the airport, at the port of entry, the Customs and Border Protection officer can, deny their entry at their discretion. That being said, throughout all the advanced parole that all the ones I've done and all the ones the attorneys I know have done, no one has been denied re-entry. I have heard of a few rare situations where DACA recipients were denied re-entry, and it was just because it came out in the newspaper, and it was either because they had criminal history or deportation orders. So yeah, it's no guarantee, but I haven't seen any people denied re-entry. So either way, it's always important to talk one-on-one with an attorney, with me, to make case is worth going forward. And then a note: leaving the U.S. with advanced parole is not considered a departure for purposes of triggering the bar for unlawful presence, right? So some of you might be aware of the unlawful presence bars or the 10-year bars or the 10-year penalty, different words for the same thing. Basically, anyone who once they're 18 and is undocumented without DACA, they start accruing unlawful presence. And if they have more than a year of unlawful presence and they leave, then they cannot come back for 10 years. It's a penalty. But there's an exception for people with DACA. First of all, as long as a person has had DACA since they were 18, they are not accruing unlawful presence, except for when there's gaps in their employment authorization during the renewals. But and so how does that play in? So yeah, let's say someone does have over a year of unlawful presence. Maybe they applied for DACA when they were 19. If they were to leave just on their own, they would generally not be able to come back for 10 years unless they get a waiver. However, if they leave on advanced parole, that's not like leaving in this sense. It's not a departure under the unlawful presence sense of the word. So they would not be triggering the 10-year bar. Yeah, that's the law for you. Words mean different things than their ordinary meanings. So, but if you want to talk about more about that, it's best to talk one-on-one because it's hard to generalize. All right, let's go to the next one. What important factors should I consider when applying for advanced parole? So traveling abroad as an undocumented person is an individualized decision that you must make based on your legal situation. Consult with an attorney if any of these apply to you. Like I mentioned before, if you have a prior deportation or removal order or an open case in the immigration court, if you have any criminal convictions, even if they did not make you ineligible for DACA. In other words, some people, have criminal convictions and they're still able to renew DACA. It could, potentially be a problem if traveling on advanced parole. And by criminal convictions, I mean that very broadly. They don't have to be like felonies. It could be, it could be in theory anything. Oops, sorry. So it's something to consider and talk about specifically with an attorney. Also consider prior departures from the US without permission to re-enter. That's like, let's say someone was brought to the US at a young age and maybe they came and left without permission several times. that theoretically could be an issue, and it would be important to talk about before applying for advanced parole. And other immigration-related fraud or misrepresentation to the government, like if someone lied to the government and it's in their records, that could potentially be a reason for problems when traveling. So yeah, again, deportations, criminal histories, multiple entries without permission, and fraud or misrepresentation. Those could be some red flags or yellow flags when thinking about this. And how do I apply for advanced parole? So there's the application, the USCIS form I-131, which can be downloaded from their website. They're going to want a statement of purpose that explains the reason for the advanced parole. So in the context of study abroad, it would be explanation of why the student wants to travel and study at the specific place. Evidence and documentation of reason for traveling. So in the context of study abroad, we would want something from the study abroad office showing that this program is in existence and that you've applied for it. You don't necessarily have to be like accepted in, because some study abroad programs, maybe Kelly could touch on this more. Sometimes they're not like totally set in stone until later, but you could still apply for study abroad as long as we have something showing that you've applied for the program. It should be good. Include a copy of your DACA approval notice to show that you have DACA. Include a copy of your photo ID, so your EAD card, which is the work authorization document, or state ID, like driver's license or ID, and 2 passport size photos. I know an easy way to get the photos, so talk to me about that. And then, because it's harder now with COVID. And then a $575 fee for US Department of Homeland Security. Talk to me about that too. It looks like Danielle is unmuted. Yeah.
Andres, that sounded a little sketchy. Can we provide some context to how a way around it?
Right. Well, for the photos, right. Well, normally you have to go to like CVS or whatever, and they charge about $15. But I can get passport photos for $1. So yeah, you just have to download an app, a passport photo app, and then email me the photos in that format, and I can get them printed out for less than $1. Yeah. So that's what I meant by that. Thanks for asking. All right, and then the $575, which is a lot. If there might be cases where maybe the school can cover it. We're looking into that. So talk to me about that as well. All right, step 4, you must be granted advance parole before leaving the country. So in other words, let's say you apply for advance parole, you cannot travel until it's actually approved. And how long is that going to take? Given that we've just barely started applying in December, we don't know. None of them have been approved yet, as far as I know. So at least 3 months, but I think more realistically, we're talking like 5 to 7 months, probably. It's really hard to predict because one, USCIS processing times vary a lot from month to month, and everything is slowed down because of COVID. But so yeah, just meet with me as soon as you can. And if it is granted, you should receive a document called the I-512L, which is this letter. I should have included a picture of it, but it's like a USCIS notice that says the dates that you can travel. And you must have this document in hand to re-enter the United States, along with your passport. And the form I-512L authorizes an immigration inspector to parole the individual into the US. So that's kind of the legal rationale behind the document. And all right, so let's keep going. Step 5, travel safe. So what does that mean? It means do not overstay beyond the dates permitted on your advance parole document. Because when you apply for advance parole, they ask for the dates that you want to travel. And so the document will be based on that. So if you come back after that date, it's very possible the border protection, the CBP agent will not let you in. So make sure you come before the date on the expiration date on the document. And obviously consider flight delays or flight cancellations. In other words, give yourself extra time on the application. And also when you fly back. So give yourself time on the application. What I mean by that is, let's say the study abroad program is, the first 2 weeks of July. Actually, and the date, I think the form asks for how many days you want to travel. So don't say like 14 days, we would ask for, I would say 60 days or even more, just to be very liberal in that and safe to give, just in case there are any delays in the advance parole document or things of that nature. And then also consider flight delays or flight cancellations. So like, let's say your advance parole document expires on February, let's say it expires March 1st. So in like 13 days, it's probably don't want to fly back on February 28th. I think that's 28 days in February. Yeah. One day, you don't want to fly back one day before the expiration, because what if there's a flight delay or a flight cancellation? Better to fly back a few days before the expiration, just in case. Also consider delays at customs when returning to the US. Give yourself extra time if connecting flights. What I mean by that is, let's say you're flying to Europe and you transfer through New York. So when you come back, you fly into New York, that's where you're probably going to go through customs and border protection. And that could take hours. So if you have a short connecting flight from New York to San Diego, then you might miss that flight. So make sure you have extra time in the connecting flight. And obviously, if you do apply for advance parole, we would talk about these things one-on-one later on, but just things to keep in mind. Do not travel to countries that you do not list on your approved application. On the application, it asks where you plan on going, and you could put more than one country, but only go to those countries that you listed. Don't go to other countries. All right, do not leave the US for more than 180 days. That's because when people leave for more than 180 days, people with DACA, they could cause problems when they renew their DACA, because the rules for DACA require that the people live here and only innocent, brief and casual trips are permitted. So more than 180 days could be problematic. Some more points to keep in mind. Travel safe. So make sure to obtain the proper visa for the country you are traveling to based on your home country's citizenship. And so let's say you're from Mexico, but you want to go to, I don't know, Brazil. Maybe you might need a visa to go there. I'm just guessing. I know Americans need visas to go to Brazil. So maybe Mexicans do too, who knows? But it's something to look into wherever you go. Make sure if you need a visa, make sure to get that. Also carry the proper documentation while traveling, including a valid passport, the advance parole document, the EAD work authorization card, the state ID or driver's license if you have one, the DACA approval notice, etc. And it's also always good to have someone you trust have a copy of these documents, just in case you lose them or something happens where you cannot have access to them. All right. And now, that's everything. Wow, that went by very quickly. So feel free to post any questions in the chat if you have any.
I have a question for you, Andres, while we're waiting to see if we have any other questions. Does the advance parole document or the application, does it specify the port of entry then that students have to come back, or that people have to come back into with advance parole?
No, that's a great question, but no, they don't. The application, they don't ask which port of entry. So yeah, students are allowed to come back through any port of entry.
Okay, and then yeah, that's a good point about the date span. I think because that can also get confusing with certain visas, because I know with certain visas going into certain countries, you have to fly in and out on the very specific days that you have on your visa. But it sounds like with advanced parole, you just have to be, You just have to re-enter before the expiration date of your advance parole application, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So let's say I ask for 3 months, and they give me until April 17th or May 17th, then I just have to come back before May 17th. Yeah. Looks like we do have a question. If something were to go wrong upon reentry, does UCSD have any say or help in getting the student back in the US? Yeah, so if I help you apply for advanced parole, then I would definitely want to know the dates that you travel, just so that I could be on call when you come back. And if there were any issues, as an attorney, I would be able to, talk to Customs and Border Protection to try to fix your case. And then as far, and I'm sure other steps could be taken if that was not, was not the resolution point. So yeah, I definitely would be on call during the coming back to the US, because that's obviously the scariest part. Yeah. Would you be able to help students who plan to study this summer? Yeah, that's a good question. Kelly, you want to talk first about that?
Yeah, we forgot to talk a little bit about the COVID situation going on in the world. So actually we are seeing a pretty, right now we're seeing most in-person study abroad programs around the country are being canceled or suspended for this summer. And there are a lot of countries that we send students to that are already telling us that they're not going to accept students from the US in the fall even. So we are probably not looking, we're probably looking to, maybe winter quarter or spring before we really get back up and running with study abroad. So that's the COVID answer. There probably won't be very many study abroad programs at all this summer. However, we do have a plug. We do have a lot of virtual programs. So if you're interested in connecting with students and faculty abroad and getting some sort of international experience kind of injected into the virtual classroom, we do have many opportunities for you. But then that will lead to, I think, the timeline for what Andres is seeing for how long advanced parole is taking.
Right. Yeah, that's the other consideration. Let's say you apply today, but it takes 6 months. We're looking at it wouldn't be approved until June, so it's really hard to plan and do that with such short notice. So yeah, I would say it's probably going to be more like winter or yeah, like winter. So here's another question. With advanced parole, is travel limited from point A to point B, or can someone travel from point A to point B to C and then back to A? For example, travel from US to Italy and then to some other country in Europe and then back to US from Italy. That's a great question. I mean, layovers or connecting flights, that doesn't really matter. So let's say like the study abroad program is in Italy, but you have a connecting flight in France, that doesn't matter. That's fine. But in terms of like actually like visiting and traveling, I would say you only go to the countries you say you're going to go to in the application, because in the advanced parole application it says what countries you plan on going to. So it's a lot better to only go to those countries.
And I can add too, just based on what we've been seeing in the last, I don't know, 5 to 6 years, for students traveling on U.S. passports, depending on what countries they want to go to, the visa issues can be complicated, or not just people traveling on U.S. passports actually, but I mean, we have a large international student population here at UC San Diego, and students traveling on other passports. It's complicated to get visas sometimes to get into a lot of different countries. And so we have a handful of programs that are multi-country programs. And I don't know, Andres, if you could talk to that, like if students are, their program specifically says they're going to study for 6 weeks in Madrid and then 6 weeks in Rome, maybe that would work okay with advanced parole, or I don't know, or if students should maybe stay away from that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention that because yeah, like this, unfortunately the study abroad or the advanced parole is for humanitarian reasons, educational reasons, or work reasons. So like, let's say you're studying in one country, but you just want to visit for fun in another country, that might not be the best idea. It would be better if it's somehow in the context of the educational program. So yeah, but if the program encompasses many countries, then definitely I would say you could do it that way. Yeah. And it does not ask for cities. Yeah, right. Because someone asks, when applying for advanced parole, if you are visiting different cities, do you also have to mention the cities you're applying to visit within the country? No, not really, because on the form it only asks for the country that you're planning on visiting. And I mean, obviously the program is usually just in one city, but I mean, I would say that, just like it's part of the program. Normally students go to other cities usually sometimes with their teachers and stuff like that. So yeah.
Andres, I have a question. If a student has requested asylum into the U.S., if they have fears if they've made a claim of fears going back to their home country, or maybe essentially their home country, but they want to travel to that country through advanced parole for humanitarian, employment, or academic purposes, would that be a conflict? Would there be a conflict given that they've claimed asylum from their country, yet they want to go back? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So for those who don't know, asylum is for people who are afraid to return to their home country because they will be persecuted based on their religion, social group, race, political opinion, things of that nature. So yeah, if they're applying for asylum, if they applied for asylum, it's definitely not recommended they go back to their home country. Because it's a contradiction. Basically, it's, you're saying you're in danger if you go back, but then you want to go back. I mean, I understand sometimes the need, but the way the government looks at it is basically like they could consider it that the person is lying on their asylum application. I've actually seen that happen, and it could have disastrous consequences. Yeah. All right. Looks like no more questions for now.
All right. Well, thank you, Andres and Danielle. This has been great. And I think those of you on the webinar know where to find all of us, hopefully. But you can always come to our websites and find us as well. So most important reminder is to contact and make an appointment with Andreas if you're interested in applying if you have DACA status and you're interested in applying for advanced parole. And then, of course, come and see us in Study Abroad. We have a virtual front desk open, and then I know Undocumented Student Services is providing all kinds of virtual advising and opportunities to connect as well. So thank you for being with us today, and stay safe. A couple more weeks of winter quarter here, and look forward to seeing you all on campus, hopefully sometime this summer or fall.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Andres.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.